Chapter 14: The Power of Detachment, Freedom Through Non-Attachment. Sun Tzu famously stated, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Detachment is the pinnacle of this principle. To detach is not to avoid action or responsibility, it is to hold your goals and desires with open hands. It is to pursue mastery without becoming bound by attachment to outcomes. The Sigma understands this. True power lies not in what you control, but in what you can walk away from without fear. Detachment is the art of stepping back, of refusing to become tangled in the webs of others' expectations, distractions, or ambitions. It is not withdrawal from life, it is freedom within it. The Sigma does not surrender to the world's whims, he creates his own rhythm. He chooses his commitments, carefully evaluates the energy he expends, and walks away when something no longer aligns with his deeper mission. In a world full of noise, detachment is the true form of mastery. The strategy of detachment. In the modern world, people are constantly tethered. They are tethered to the expectations of their families, their colleagues, their social circles, and their past decisions. The Sigma, by contrast, practices detachment as a strategic tool. He understands that the more you attach yourself to outcomes or perceptions, the more you are enslaved by them. Sun Tzu's principle of winning without fighting translates here: by refusing to be chained to any one thing, the Sigma remains flexible and fluid. He is never caught by surprise, because he is prepared to walk away from anything that no longer serves him. Detachment is not indifference. It is clarity. It is the capacity to pursue your goals without being ensnared by the emotional noise that so often accompanies ambition. People think they need to fight for their dreams, to chase them relentlessly. But this approach, while it may seem admirable, leads to exhaustion and frustration. The Sigma knows that the greatest victory is that which requires no battle. His detachment comes from understanding that the battle is not in the outcome, it is in the pursuit itself. In practical terms, detachment means refusing to be emotionally bound to outcomes. The Sigma does not obsess over every deal, every win, or every loss. He practices what the Stoics called apatheia, which is the state of being unaffected by the external world's judgments. Whether he wins or loses, his peace is not disturbed because his self-worth does not depend on the circumstances. This gives him the psychological freedom to act with consistency and confidence, without the debilitating need for approval or validation. Detachment as emotional sovereignty. Emotional sovereignty is perhaps the most powerful application of detachment. Sun Tzu teaches, if your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. This is an invitation to make your opponent emotionally unstable by creating stress or provoking them. But the Sigma never falls for this trick. He is always the calm center of the storm. His emotional state is his own, and he controls it with the discipline of a general controlling his army. In the face of provocation, the Sigma does not react immediately. He does not let anger, frustration, or envy dictate his actions. Instead, he detaches and chooses his response. Musashi, in his Book of 5 Rings, advises, "Do not regret what you have done." This is a call to detach from the emotional residue of past actions and outcomes. Regret, guilt, and anxiety are emotional traps that prevent forward movement. The Sigma understands this and practices emotional detachment by accepting each moment as it is, without clinging to what could have been or what might be. In everyday life, this means not allowing others' moods or judgments to affect you. When others criticize, the Sigma listens without taking offense. When others praise, the Sigma thanks them but does not internalize their judgment. He allows his emotional responses to be deliberate, not reflexive. He understands that his emotional state is the battleground, and he refuses to let others occupy that space. This detachment extends to relationships. Sun Tzu advised, if your allies are strong, you will become stronger. If they are weak, you will become weaker. The Sigma does not form relationships out of need, but out of strategic alignment. He is not bound by loyalty to people who do not align with his deeper values. He is loyal to himself first, which allows him to be loyal to others without becoming dependent. Detachment allows him to evaluate relationships based on merit and mutual benefit, not emotional obligation. Detachment and possessions. The Sigma's detachment also applies to material things. In a consumerist society, attachment to possessions can quickly become a form of enslavement. The more we own, the more we must care for, protect, and maintain. The Sigma, however, chooses possessions with intention. He does not accumulate for the sake of status or validation. He owns only what supports his mission, no more, no less. The master does not possess anything. He uses what he needs, but he does not possess it, Musasha wrote. Detachment from possessions is not about abandoning everything, it is about recognizing the transient nature of material things. The Sigma understands that the value of an object lies in its utility, not in its status. A high-end car is not a symbol of success, it is a tool for transportation. A designer watch is not a reflection of wealth, it is a means to tell time. The Sigma does not attach emotional significance to his possessions. He owns them, but they do not own him. This principle of detachment also extends to the idea of scarcity. The Sigma knows that the universe operates on abundance, not lack. The more you attach yourself to the belief that there is not enough, whether it's money, time, or opportunities, the more you restrict your potential. Sun Tzu writes, "Opportunities multiply as they are seized." The Sigma operates on the assumption that the more he gives, the more he receives. He shares his knowledge, his resources, his time, and his skills freely, knowing that true abundance comes from circulating these things without attachment. Detachment in leadership. Detachment is essential in leadership. A leader who is attached to his ego, his image, or his position will be bound by those things. His decisions will be motivated by fear of loss, not by the long-term vision. Sun Tzu teaches, a leader leads by example, not by force. The Sigma leads not by asserting dominance or authority, but by example. His actions are aligned with his principles, and his detachment from the outcome allows him to make the tough, unpopular decisions with clarity and confidence. The Sigma's detachment does not mean he is aloof or disengaged from his team. Quite the opposite. It means he is able to connect with others without becoming emotionally enmeshed in their problems. He gives advice, provides guidance, and supports his team, but he is not ruled by the same fears and insecurities that drive others. He makes decisions from a place of emotional clarity, not emotional need. His detachment gives him the space to lead with wisdom, not impulse. Detachment in business and strategy. In business, detachment is essential for making the hard decisions. Most people get emotionally attached to their products, their ideas, or their companies. They become so emotionally invested that they cannot pivot when necessary. They cannot cut losses, adapt, or change direction without feeling like they've failed. The Sigma does not operate this way. He is constantly evaluating his business strategies with a critical, detached eye. When he sees that something is no longer working, he moves on without hesitation. This detachment extends to the people involved in his business. He does not keep employees, partners, or investors out of loyalty, but out of alignment with the company's mission. When someone no longer serves the greater vision, the Sigma detaches with tact, knowing that the health of the whole is more important than any individual. Sun Tzu advises, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not, will be victorious." The Sigma's business decisions are strategic and measured, not reactive or emotionally charged. You and this lesson? Begin today by auditing your attachments. Where are you holding on too tightly to things, people, or outcomes? What are you afraid of losing, and how is that fear restricting your growth? Practice detachment by letting go of unnecessary possessions. Clean your space, simplify your routines, and focus on only what supports your mission. In relationships, practice detachment by giving freely without needing validation or control. In your work, learn to cut away the parts that no longer align with your vision. Remember, detachment does not mean apathy. It means freedom. It means the strength to act without being tethered by fear or obligation. The Sigma's power comes from his ability to choose, without attachment, the actions that align with his true purpose. And in that freedom, he remains unbeatable. Key takeaway: detachment is not about withdrawing from life, but about refusing to be bound by it. When you detach from outcomes, possessions, and emotional reactions, you gain the clarity and strength to act with precision and purpose. Chapter 15: Mastery of Timing, the Art of Choosing the Right Moment. Timing is everything. He will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight, says Sun Tzu. This is the cornerstone of strategic mastery. The Sigma understands this truth deeply. Victory is not always about overwhelming force or superior resources. Sometimes, it is about knowing when to move, when to pause, and when to act with overwhelming precision at the perfect moment. Timing is the silent factor that separates the truly successful from the merely active. In war, as in life, it is easy to mistake haste for speed. The rush to do something can often result in unnecessary conflict, wasted resources, and lost opportunities. But the Sigma, like a master chess player, knows that true power comes from patience, waiting for the optimal time to act. Sun Tzu's wisdom on timing is often overlooked. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. The true advantage comes from waiting for the right moment to strike, not forcing the issue before the terrain is prepared. The strategy of timing, knowing when to act. The Sigma's understanding of timing begins with a deep awareness of the external world, the battlefield of modern life. In business, as in warfare, success is often about positioning, putting yourself in the right place at the right time. But being at the right place is not enough. You must also recognize the moment when action will yield the greatest return. Timing is about identifying the precise moment when effort converges with opportunity. Consider the analogy of a hunter lying in wait for his prey. The hunter does not charge headlong into the forest, hoping to stumble upon his quarry. He remains still, observing, learning the patterns of movement. Only when the prey enters his kill zone does he act. This is timing in its purest form, not acting impulsively, but patiently waiting for the right moment to make a decisive move. The Sigma does the same in his life. He does not rush into projects or decisions simply because others are moving. He observes, learns, and strikes when the time is right. Sun Tzu counsels, when the enemy is relaxed, make them toil. When full, starve them. When settled, make them move. This principle speaks to the use of timing to create disadvantage for your opponents. It is a psychological game, a game of patience. When your opponents believe they are safe or comfortable, you strike. When they believe they have achieved success, you create new challenges that force them to react. The Sigma understands this principle deeply. He knows when to be patient and when to apply pressure. He waits for his competitors to overextend, then capitalizes on their mistakes. The moment of decision, the Sigma's commitment to action. The Sigma's mastery of timing is not passive, it is active in its own way. While others scramble in the noise of constant movement, he waits, observes, and, when the moment arrives, acts with an energy that leaves little room for resistance. This is not mere reaction, it is strategic action, a commitment to follow through when the conditions are ripe. Consider a stock market investor. The Sigma knows that while it is tempting to buy and sell with every fluctuation of the market, the true advantage lies in recognizing when the market is poised for a shift. He does not panic during downturns. He waits for the market to reveal its true course, and when the opportunity aligns with his principles, he strikes decisively. This is the essence of timing, waiting for the market to reveal its weaknesses and moving decisively when they present themselves. The Sigma's discipline here is crucial. He does not confuse action with activity. Many people believe that success requires constant motion. They rush into decisions, chase opportunities that are not aligned with their goals, and spread themselves too thin. The Sigma knows better. He spends his time creating systems, honing his craft, and preparing for the moment when his skill will meet the perfect opportunity. He creates an environment of readiness, so that when the right moment arises, he can act decisively without hesitation. Sun Tzu advises, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This is not the avoidance of conflict, but the avoidance of unnecessary conflict. By waiting for the moment when his opponent is weak, the Sigma is able to act with overwhelming precision. He does not fight on someone else's terms, he creates his own timing, his own terrain. He chooses his battles carefully, and when he does engage, he does so with devastating force. Timing and opportunity, seeing what others miss. Opportunity, like timing, is often fleeting. Sun Tzu teaches, opportunities multiply as they are seized. The Sigma understands that the moment you seize an opportunity, you create additional opportunities. This is the principle of compound leverage in action. By acting with precision and choosing the right moment, the Sigma creates a cascade of advantages that flow from his initial decision. Timing is not just about waiting for opportunities, it is also about creating them. The Sigma understands that every decision compounds, small, timely moves can lead to exponential growth, while hasty decisions often lead to losses. This concept applies in relationships, career moves, financial decisions, and personal growth. The Sigma builds systems that give him leverage, knowing that the right move at the right time can multiply his impact. For example, consider a small business owner who identifies an underserved market. Instead of entering a crowded space, he finds a niche where he can provide exceptional value. He does not rush into launching, he spends time building relationships, gaining expertise, and creating a product that truly meets the needs of that niche. When he finally enters the market, he is not just another player, he is a game changer. The moment of opportunity becomes a gateway for sustained success. The Sigma is not simply reactive, he is proactive in creating his own opportunities. The role of patience, timing in the long game. While the Sigma's actions are decisive, they are never rushed. His patience is not passivity, it is the patience of a master. Sun Tzu teaches that, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The Sigma's patience comes from his deep understanding of himself and the world around him. He does not rush into decisions because he knows that rushing creates mistakes. He is comfortable with uncertainty and knows that clarity will come with the passage of time. Consider the long-term strategy of someone like Jeff Bezos. His early strategy with Amazon was not to be the largest retailer overnight but to establish a foothold and expand relentlessly over time. Amazon's strength was not built on short bursts of energy but on consistent, patient effort. Bezos understood that the true value of Amazon would compound over years, not months. This long-term view is exactly what Sun Tzu refers to when he writes, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not will be victorious." Patience is a strategy. It allows the Sigma to bide his time until the right moment comes. Unlike those who rush headlong into every opportunity, the Sigma waits, watches, and prepares. When the time is right, he takes decisive action, and when he acts, the results are profound. Timing in relationships, the right words at the right moment. In relationships, timing can make the difference between connection and conflict. The Sigma knows that some conversations are best held in silence, while others require boldness. Sun Tzu's advice, when your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him. The Sigma does not engage in petty disputes, but when a conflict arises, he knows exactly when to step in and when to withdraw. Timing allows him to hold the high ground in any conversation, ensuring that his words land with precision. The Sigma is also attuned to the right moment for deepening relationships or stepping back. He understands that relationships, like business ventures, require careful timing. When is the right time to collaborate? When is the right time to set boundaries? The Sigma does not rush into connections for the sake of validation, nor does he abandon relationships at the first sign of difficulty. He chooses his alliances and disengagements carefully, knowing that the best time to act is not when pressure mounts, but when the right conditions align for long-term success. You and this lesson? Audit your own timing. Where are you acting impulsively? Where are you rushing to make decisions that should be approached with patience? Reflect on your patterns. Are you rushing into new projects or waiting for the right moment? Are you allowing your decisions to be driven by outside pressures, or are you taking the time to evaluate each move carefully? Remember that timing is the silent partner of strategy. It is not enough to have a plan, you must know when to implement that plan. Practice patience in your actions, reflect before you react, and wait for the moment when your actions will have the greatest impact. Timing is not just about the when, but about the why. Why this moment, why this action, and why now? Key takeaway: timing is the foundation of every successful move. The Sigma does not act because it is expected, he acts because the moment is right. Patience amplifies his power, and precision magnifies his success. Master timing, and you will not only seize opportunities, you will create them. Chapter 16: The Economy of Energy, Preserving and Directing Power. Sun Tzu wrote, "Energy may be likened to the bending of a crossbow, decision, to the releasing of the trigger." The Sigma takes this metaphor to heart. Energy is not infinite. Like the tension stored in a bow, it must be carefully accumulated, conserved, and released at the right time. Waste it, and your force dissipates. Conserve it, and when released, it becomes unstoppable. Mastery of energy, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, is the Sigma's hidden arsenal. Most people live as if energy is endless. They scatter themselves across trivialities, bleed themselves dry on shallow engagements, and wonder why they are perpetually exhausted. They confuse busyness with productivity, activity with progress. The Sigma refuses this trap. He is deliberate. He understands that energy is the true currency of power, and he spends it as a general spends troops, carefully, strategically, and only on campaigns worthy of the cost. The nature of energy, what Sun Tzu teaches. Energy is motion, but motion without direction is chaos. Sun Tzu emphasizes the need for alignment. Direct your energy against the enemy's weakness, and you will exhaust him while conserving yourself. This lesson translates beyond war into every domain of modern life. It is not enough to have vigor, vigor must be channeled. The Sigma understands the distinction between brute force and directed force. Brute force smashes blindly and tires quickly. Directed force strikes with precision, conserving reserves for future engagements. Consider the river. Uncontrolled, its water disperses, flooding fields without purpose. But when directed through channels, the same water powers turbines and generates electricity. The Sigma's energy is like this, not scattered across distractions, but focused into channels that yield power. Conservation, the fortress of energy. To master energy, one must first conserve it. Conservation does not mean stagnation, it means discipline. The Sigma asks himself daily, where is my energy leaking? The leaks are often subtle: constant notifications, endless small talk, commitments made out of guilt, indulgences mistaken for rest. Each is a drain, a diversion from the true campaign. Sun Tzu warned, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. The Sigma applies this inwardly: know your energy drains, and you can prevent your own defeat. He identifies patterns that sap his vitality and eliminates them ruthlessly. He structures his environment to minimize leakage. This is why many great strategists lived simply. Not because simplicity is inherently virtuous, but because complexity consumes energy. Napoleon's officers observed that he often wore the same uniform for days. He saved energy by reducing decisions about trivial matters. Likewise, Steve Jobs famously wore the same black turtleneck. Such choices were not eccentricities, they were acts of conservation. Each unnecessary decision avoided was energy preserved for the battles that mattered. The Sigma adopts the same mindset. He guards his routines, trims his obligations, and avoids the trap of scattering his firepower across 100 fronts. Conservation of energy is not laziness, it is preparation. Direction, energy as a weapon. Energy conserved must be directed. Here the Sigma applies Sun Tzu's wisdom: attack him where he is unprepared, appear where you are not expected. Energy is most effective when concentrated, not dispersed. A single decisive blow can accomplish what 100 scattered efforts cannot. This principle applies in modern strategy. Consider Elon Musk, who channels his energy not into dozens of unrelated ventures, but into a handful of moonshot projects: Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink. Each requires enormous energy, but because his energy is concentrated, the results reshape entire industries. The Sigma sees in this example the power of direction. The Sigma does not simply conserve, he aims. His energy is aligned with his goals, his values, his long-term vision. He does not waste power on battles that do not serve his mission. Every action, every commitment is measured against this question: does this advance the campaign, or does it scatter my reserves? If it scatters, he withdraws. If it advances, he commits fully. Rhythm, the cycles of energy. Energy is not static, it moves in cycles. Sun Tzu recognized this. In all fighting, the direct method may be used for joining battle, but indirect methods will be needed in order to secure victory. The Sigma interprets this as the need to alternate between exertion and recovery, between advance and retreat. Energy, like a bowstring, cannot remain drawn forever without snapping. Modern science confirms this ancient truth. Peak performers, from athletes to chess grandmasters, structure their training around cycles, intense bursts followed by recovery. They know that without recovery, effort decays into exhaustion. The Sigma builds his life on similar rhythms. He works intensely, but he also retreats into solitude, silence, or physical restoration. He embraces sleep as strategy, exercise as renewal, meditation as sharpening. He knows that each cycle of restoration multiplies the effectiveness of his next exertion. Contrast this with the masses, who grind without rhythm, mistaking burnout for progress. They are like armies that march without rest, arriving at battle too weary to fight. The Sigma refuses this folly. He arrives rested, focused, his energy gathered like a coiled spring. Emotional energy, guarding the citadel. Not all energy is physical. Emotional energy is often more draining than labor. Sun Tzu cautions: hold out baits to entice the enemy. Feign disorder, and crush him. In modern life, distractions bait your emotions, pulling you into outrage, envy, anxiety. Each reaction consumes energy. The Sigma practices emotional sovereignty. He refuses to be baited. When insulted, he withholds reaction. When provoked, he delays response. Like a general holding troops in reserve, he chooses when and whether to expend emotional energy. He remembers Marcus Aurelius' words: "You always have the power of no opinion." To withhold emotional reaction is to conserve inner firepower. This is not coldness, it is clarity. Emotional energy directed wisely fuels passion, creativity, and connection. Directed poorly, it degenerates into arguments, gossip, and endless drama. The Sigma does not waste his fire on what does not advance his mission. The compound effect of energy. Every act of conservation and direction compounds. Small reserves become large reserves. Concentrated action creates disproportionate results. Sun Tzu's principle of force applies: when you concentrate your forces, even if you are outnumbered, you will win. The Sigma knows that energy is leverage. When he releases his energy in a decisive move, the impact is magnified by the reserves he has preserved. Consider Muhammad Ali, who conserved energy by leaning on the ropes in the famous rumble in the jungle. While George Foreman exhausted himself with punches, Ali absorbed, waited, and conserved. In the 8th round, with reserves intact, Ali struck decisively and ended the fight. Energy was the decisive factor, not brute strength, but conservation and timing. The Sigma models this in his own battles. He does not exhaust himself proving points. He conserves, channels, and strikes when it matters. You and this lesson? Audit your energy. Where are the leaks? Where are you scattering force across battles that do not serve you? What would happen if you conserved, if you trimmed obligations, if you cut away distractions? Then ask, where will you direct the reserves you build? Energy without direction is wasted. Energy aligned with purpose is unstoppable. Remember Sun Tzu's lesson, energy is like the drawn bow. If you pull too soon, you waste the shot. If you never release, you gain nothing. But if you conserve, direct, and release at the precise moment, your power is multiplied, your victory assured. Key takeaway: the Sigma does not grind endlessly. He conserves, directs, and times his release. Energy is his hidden weapon, and with it, he bends the world to his will. Chapter 17: The Terrain of Modern Life, Mapping the Invisible Battlefield. Sun Tzu opens one of his most vital teachings with this truth: know the ground, know the weather, your victory will then be total. To the Sigma, this is not only about rivers, forests, or mountains. It is about the terrain of modern life, the invisible topography of markets, technology, culture, institutions, and human psychology. In the ancient battlefield, terrain was the slope of a hill, the depth of a river, the density of a forest. In today's battles, terrain is the algorithm, the network, the attention span, the bias. Whoever understands terrain sees patterns others overlook. Whoever misreads terrain is lost before the first move. The Sigma lives by the art of mapping. He refuses to stumble blindly into arenas designed to consume him. He reads the ground, the rules, the costs. He watches how people move, how institutions conceal traps, how technology changes the slope beneath his feet. He remembers Musashi's dictum: you must understand the way of all professions. Terrain is not just external landscape, it is the invisible architecture of power and influence that governs how moves unfold. Sun Tzu's classifications of ground. Sun Tzu famously classified 9 kinds of terrain: dispersive, facile, contentious, open, intersecting, serious, difficult, hemmed in, and desperate. To the untrained eye, these are categories of geography. To the Sigma, they are categories of life. Sun Tzu's 9 kinds of terrain were dispersive, facile, contentious, open, intersecting, serious, difficult, hemmed in, and desperate ground. By reframing terrain, the Sigma applies Sun Tzu's categories to modern battlefields. What appears as random noise becomes structured understanding. He can see where he is walking, while others stumble blind. Modern terrain, the algorithm and the crowd. Today, the terrain is not just physical, it is digital. The Sigma knows that algorithms shape visibility and invisibility. To move on digital terrain without awareness is like marching into a swamp. Social media feeds, search engine rankings, recommendation loops, these are the hills and valleys of modern warfare. Those who know how to position themselves gain reach without excess effort. Those who ignore terrain spend energy shouting into voids. Sun Tzu wrote, "The skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible, and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy." For the Sigma, this means positioning in the digital sphere so that silence does not mean absence, and presence does not mean dependence. He plays the algorithm, but he is not enslaved by it. He uses terrain as leverage, not as master. Similarly, the crowd is terrain. The mass mood of society shifts like weather, euphoric one season, panic the next. The Sigma studies these tides. He does not fight the crowd directly, he reads its direction. Like a sailor reading the wind, he positions his craft to move where others drift aimlessly. He invests when fear dominates, withdraws when greed blinds. He knows that, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Mapping psychological terrain. The most dangerous ground is not outside, it is within. The terrain of your own mind is filled with rivers of distraction, cliffs of doubt, swamps of fear. Sun Tzu emphasized knowing yourself as much as knowing the enemy. The Sigma walks his inner terrain daily. He charts habits, weaknesses, compulsions. He observes his tendencies under stress. He is honest about where his defenses are thin. Marcus Aurelius echoed this terrain mapping: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. By surveying inner ground, the Sigma avoids ambush by his own impulses. He does not deny fear, but he notes where it lies. He does not suppress desire, but he marks where it misleads. His self-mapping turns vulnerability into awareness, and awareness into strength. Strategic movement across terrain. Sun Tzu taught that generals who fail to understand terrain lead their armies to ruin. Likewise, men who misunderstand the modern landscape, social, economic, political, psychological, become casualties of forces they could have foreseen. The Sigma treats life as a campaign map. Before entering new arenas, careers, relationships, ventures, he surveys the ground. Who controls the heights? Where are the choke points? What exits exist? He remembers Fabius Maximus, who avoided Hannibal's superior ground, and George Washington, who chose battles selectively, refusing to be baited into terrain unfavorable to him. He asks, what terrain am I walking into? Am I walking into dispersive ground disguised as serious? Am I binding myself to hemmed-in ground by taking on debt? Am I entering open ground unprepared for the competition? These questions save him from ruin before he even marches. Modern case studies: terrain misread and terrain mastered. Look at Kodak. They invented digital photography yet clung to film, misreading the terrain of innovation. Their generals marched their army into a swamp of denial. They perished, not because they lacked power, but because they ignored terrain. Now contrast with Netflix. They began by mailing DVDs, but as the terrain shifted toward streaming, they adapted quickly. They mastered the slope of technology and the weather of culture, striking before others understood. Sun Tzu would recognize them as generals who seized the high ground before the enemy even knew it existed. The Sigma applies this lesson personally. He watches terrain shifts in careers, industries, and relationships. He adapts swiftly, not by chasing every trend, but by reading the underlying slope. He recognizes that the true strategist does not resist terrain, he uses it. Endurance and terrain. Finally, terrain teaches endurance. Difficult ground slows the march. Desperate ground demands courage. Open ground requires patience. The Sigma accepts that not all terrain is equal. Some slows progress. Some tempts shortcuts. Some forces suffering. But he never curses the ground, he studies it. Every patch of ground is a lesson. Every obstacle is data. Every hardship is a new contour on the map. Sun Tzu advised, in war, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Terrain awareness prevents lengthy campaigns. It shows you where to strike, where to avoid, where to wait. It ensures that your journey is not wasted on dead ends. You and this lesson? Ask yourself, what terrain are you walking today? Is it open or hemmed in, fertile or barren, desperate or dispersive? Have you mistaken easy ground for progress? Have you bound yourself in debt or commitments that leave no exit? Map your ground. Map your inner terrain, your fears, your temptations, your blind spots. Map the outer terrain, your career, your relationships, your culture. Mark the hills, the valleys, the choke points. Strategy is not brute force, it is movement aligned with ground. Key takeaway: the Sigma who understands terrain cannot be surprised. He does not fight blind battles, he does not exhaust himself in swamps, he does not perish in deserts. He surveys, he positions, and then he moves with inevitability. To know the ground is to know victory before the first step. Chapter 18: The Discipline of Silence. Silence is not emptiness. It is a weapon, a shield, and a source of strength. In a world that worships noise, the endless chatter of feeds, the performative outrage of commentary, the desperate hunger to be seen, silence is rebellion. But more than rebellion, it is mastery. Sun Tzu knew this long before microphones and megaphones. Be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Thereby you can be the director of the opponent's fate. For the Sigma, silence is not simply the absence of speech. It is the presence of control. It is the refusal to be provoked into revealing too much, the discipline of leaving mystery intact, the strategy of speaking only when the terrain demands it. Just as the archer holds the arrow until the precise moment of release, the Sigma holds his words until they carry maximum impact. Noise disperses power. Silence concentrates it. The power of restraint. Sun Tzu taught, the skillful fighter puts himself into a position which makes defeat impossible, and does not miss the moment for defeating the enemy. Speech is such a position. Words, once released, cannot be recalled. They bind you, expose you, arm your opponent with intelligence. To speak carelessly is to sabotage yourself. To hold silence is to preserve optionality. Consider how negotiators use silence as a lever. The most seasoned dealmakers know that silence unsettles. A counterparty talks to fill the void, often conceding more than they intended. The Sigma learns to wield this dynamic not only in business but in every arena of life. Silence is the void that pulls truth from others while guarding your own. Contrast this with the common man on social media, who reveals every thought, every irritation, every ambition. He mistakes transparency for authenticity, as though the world is entitled to his interior. But transparency is weakness if it empowers others to predict, preempt, or manipulate. Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is based on deception." Silence is deception without lying, it withholds rather than misleads. And in withholding, it preserves unpredictability. Silence as territory. Think of silence as terrain. Just as there are high grounds and choke points, there are landscapes of communication. Some terrain is flooded with noise, where shouting matches dominate and value evaporates. Other terrain is barren, where a word spoken at the right moment reverberates like thunder. The Sigma positions himself on the latter. Churchill was famed for his oratory, but his power was not in his words alone. It was in his pauses. He knew when silence magnified meaning, when stillness forced listeners to lean forward, when the unsaid was louder than the said. This is terrain discipline, to know that silence is not absence but presence. Sun Tzu taught that generals must shape the battlefield. If he is secure at all points, be prepared for him. If he is in superior strength, evade him. The Sigma applies this to communication. When the opponent is loud, secure in noise, the Sigma evades into silence. There, he forces the opponent to overextend, to reveal more, to scatter strength in constant chatter. Silence in modern combat. Modern life is combat by information. The feed is endless skirmish. The inbox is siege. Meetings are drawn-out attrition wars. Everyone feels compelled to contribute, to add their words to the noise, lest they be forgotten. The Sigma refuses this battlefield. He withdraws into silence, forcing others to exhaust themselves. Consider Warren Buffett again. He speaks rarely, but when he does, markets shift. Contrast him with CEOs who flood interviews, podcasts, and press releases with constant messaging. Their abundance of words dilutes their weight. Buffett's scarcity multiplies his. Silence makes each word a weapon. Or think of Miyamoto Musashi, who wrote, "Perception is strong and sight weak." In strategy, it is important to see distant things as if they were close and to take a distanced view of close things. Silence is perception's ally. When you withdraw from the noise, you see what others cannot. You observe without being observed, plan without being disrupted. The discipline of withholding. Most people speak to relieve tension. Silence creates tension. This is why it is so difficult. It feels unnatural in the modern rhythm to not respond, to not explain, to not fill the void. But discipline is doing what feels unnatural when it grants advantage. Sun Tzu warned, "He who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not, will be victorious." Silence is lying in wait. To withhold speech is to make the enemy impatient. He will rush, reveal, stumble. You will remain composed. In practical life, this manifests in interviews, negotiations, arguments. A Sigma asked a difficult question may pause longer than expected, holding silence. The other fills the space with nervous elaboration, sometimes confessing more than asked. The Sigma loses nothing by waiting, he gains intelligence. Silence and identity. Silence also protects identity. The more you speak, the more you are known, the more you are predictable. The Sigma values opacity. He knows that being unreadable is leverage. Sun Tzu said, "Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt." Silence is that impenetrability. It denies opponents the pattern of your thoughts. Think of the poker table. The player who talks constantly, jokes, narrates his every move, he is transparent. The quiet player, unreadable, forces opponents into uncertainty. Every move he makes is heavier because no one can predict its foundation. The Sigma plays life like that table. The spiritual dimension. Silence is not only strategic, it is spiritual. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote constantly in his journal but spoke sparingly in public. His words were considered private before they were public. Silence was his crucible of thought. Modern people fear silence because silence forces confrontation with the self. Without noise, you hear your doubts, your desires, your fears. This is why many drown themselves in distraction. But the Sigma sits in silence, because he knows the enemy to conquer first is within. Sun Tzu's maxim returns, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." Silence is the forge where self-knowledge is hammered. Meditation, solitude, retreat, these are not luxuries but necessities. They sharpen perception, restore sovereignty, anchor identity. Silence, chosen and disciplined, is the Sigma's reset button. The cost of noise. Why is silence rare? Because noise flatters ego. Noise signals relevance. To speak is to assert existence, to demand recognition. But recognition is a leash. The one who constantly signals loses freedom. The Sigma does not need constant proof of life. He lives it quietly, visibly when necessary, invisibly when advantageous. History warns us here. Leaders who spoke too often revealed too much, and enemies exploited it. Generals who boasted before battle often fell. In contrast, leaders like George Washington wielded silence as gravitas. He did not clamor for kingship, his quiet refusal gave him more authority than a crown. Noise is cheap. Silence is expensive. It costs comfort, it costs recognition, it costs the ego's narcotic. That is why it is powerful. You and this lesson. Practice silence as discipline. Begin in conversation, hold pauses longer than comfort allows. Let others speak into the void. In meetings, measure your words, speak last, or not at all. On social media, post less than you consume, resist the urge to narrate your every mood. In conflict, step back into silence and watch your opponent overextend. Train yourself to resist the reflex of noise. Create pockets of silence daily, no screens, no speech, just observation. Journal in private, speak in public only what strengthens. Let your silence become substance. Remember Sun Tzu's warning, he who is prudent and lies in wait for an enemy who is not, will be victorious. Be that man. Let silence be your fortress and your blade. When you do speak, speak like a thunderbolt, brief, decisive, unstoppable. Chapter 19, The Economy of Motion. Sun Tzu wrote, in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak. Embedded in this axiom is an economy. Conserve your strength, expend it only where it multiplies. This principle is as relevant to swords and arrows as it is to words, money, time, and energy in modern life. The Sigma understands this deeply. To him, the most precious currency is not cash but motion, every action, every exertion, every decision. Motion is finite. Waste it, and you weaken. Economize it, and you dominate. The modern world bleeds motion. People scatter their strength across trivialities. They scroll endlessly, argue over nothing, multitask until they fragment, invest energy where no return exists. They are soldiers dispersing arrows at shadows, leaving themselves empty when the real enemy appears. The Sigma rejects this hemorrhaging. He counts every move, like a chess master who knows each piece has value. The battlefield of efficiency. Sun Tzu wrote, the clever combatant looks to the effect of combined energy, and does not require too much from individuals. This is economy in pure form. Energy, when scattered, evaporates. When concentrated, it multiplies. Efficiency is the art of deploying motion where returns are exponential. To fight endlessly is not efficiency, to fight decisively is. A general who spends cavalry on trivial skirmishes has no charge left for the decisive flank. A man who spends hours in petty arguments has no focus left for creation. The Sigma views his motion like a banker views capital. Every action must yield interest. He avoids consumption for consumption's sake, action for action's sake. He seeks leverage. If one motion creates 10 ripples, that is an economy of motion. If 10 motions create one ripple, that is bankruptcy. Motion and time. Time is the great terrain upon which motion plays out. Hours are the battlefield. Sun Tzu instructed, he who knows when he can fight and when he cannot, will be victorious. The Sigma interprets this as the discipline of timing. Every day is filled with opportunities to fight, respond to messages, attend meetings, chase tasks. But not every fight matters. To squander motion on low-ground battles is to arrive exhausted when the decisive hill must be taken. The Sigma defends mornings as offensive campaigns, the sacred time for creation, writing, training, strategy. Midday is negotiation, collaboration. Evenings are withdrawal and recovery. Each hour is territory. To surrender it casually is to lose ground. Sun Tzu warned, if he sends reinforcements everywhere, he will be weak everywhere. Most scatter their reinforcements across the digital field, battling trivialities on every front. The Sigma chooses. He knows that strength without concentration is diffusion. Motion and wealth. Wealth is not simply accumulation. It is concentration of motion that yields compounding. Buffett's insight, that the great say no almost all the time, is ancient wisdom restated. Sun Tzu wrote, the victorious strategist only seeks battle after the victory has been won. In other words, he does not chase every opportunity. He chooses only those where motion compounds into certainty. The Sigma adopts this frame. Every yes costs motion. Each obligation, each shallow engagement, each vanity project bleeds soldiers from the army. He evaluates like a general, is this campaign worth the march? Will the spoils justify the strain? If not, he withholds motion. Historical case studies. Alexander the Great economized motion with ruthless precision. He refused unnecessary sieges, instead turning enemies into allies, conserving strength for decisive clashes. His campaign was a study in leverage, maximum conquest from minimal wasted steps. Napoleon in Russia exemplifies the opposite. He poured endless motion into frozen terrain, exhausting supply lines, soldiers, morale. The march was motion uneconomized, endless effort with negative return. The Sigma remembers, wasted motion is not neutral, it corrodes. Genghis Khan demonstrates balance. His forces were small compared to empires he toppled, yet their efficiency was legendary. He refused frontal assaults unless assured of advantage. He used deception, speed, and psychological warfare to multiply every step. Motion economized became empire. In modern life, the same plays out. Tech giants economize by eliminating friction. One motion, a button click, opens the world. Startups that pivot endlessly, by contrast, spend motion without compounding. The Sigma studies both. The principle of minimum effective dose. Medicine speaks of the minimum effective dose, the smallest input that produces the desired result. Sun Tzu anticipated this: do not press a desperate foe too hard. Overextension consumes resources unnecessarily. Victory requires only enough, not excess. The Sigma applies this to training. He lifts only what builds strength, not what inflates vanity. To work, he chooses the minimum moves that deliver maximum return. To finance, he invests in few things deeply, not many things shallowly. Minimum motion, maximum result. This is not laziness but mastery. To strike with one blow instead of 10 is not weakness but refinement. Musashi often ended duels with a single stroke. The Sigma studies such economy, the one cut that ends the war. Motion in speech. Words are motion. Sun Tzu advised, be extremely subtle, even to the point of formlessness. Be extremely mysterious, even to the point of soundlessness. Restraint in speech preserves weight. Lincoln's Gettysburg Address lasted minutes but outlasted libraries of speeches. Churchill economized words into thunderbolts, rallying nations. The Sigma practices this: he withdraws empty talk, delivers words that shift terrain. In a noisy world, economy of speech is power. Silence itself becomes a move. Each withheld word is preserved motion. Each delivered word, a strike. Motion in conflict. Conflict is the most common drain of motion. The Sigma calculates whether a conflict yields return. If not, he withdraws. Sun Tzu, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. To argue endlessly online is to burn troops in barren terrain. To fight petty office politics is to deplete armies before the decisive negotiation. The Sigma conserves. He chooses silence, patience, or redirection. Consider Quintus Fabius Maximus, the Roman delayer. His refusal to engage Hannibal wastefully preserved Rome's strength. Modern Sigmas replicate this, refusing ego wars, preserving motion for decisive strikes. Training economy. Economy of motion is not natural, it is trained. The Sigma builds systems. He sets time boundaries, no scattered browsing, no infinite meetings. He builds habits, 3 daily priorities, not 30. He enforces rituals, journaling, training, silence. Michael Phelps swam the same warm-up daily, rehearsing victory. Musashi practiced endlessly to distill movement into inevitability. Their greatness came not from more motion, but from refined motion. Spiritual economy. Excessive motion corrodes the soul. The endless chase for appearances, applause, and validation drains meaning. Sun Tzu reminds, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. But only those who preserve motion have clarity to see it. The exhausted stumble past openings. The Sigma, conserved, seizes them. Economy of motion leads to stillness. Stillness is not passivity, it is readiness. It is the crouched bow, not yet released, yet already lethal. Extended modern applications. Digital life, each notification is an invitation to waste motion. The Sigma disables, filters, curates. His attention is economy's fortress. A health, overtraining burns reserves. Undertraining wastes potential. The sigma calibrates, motion economized becomes longevity. Relationships, not every bond deserves equal motion. The sigma invests deeply in few, avoids scattering across many. Loyalty compounds, distraction dilutes. A leader who intervenes in every detail burns motion. The sigma delegates, trains, empowers. He saves his strike for decisive moves. You and this lesson? Audit every arena of motion. Begin with your time. Which hours yield no return? Reclaim them. Move to your speech. Which words are wasted? Which silence is more powerful? Withdraw them. Examine your conflicts. Which wars are barren? Exit them. Treat motion as currency. Each yes is a coin. Each battle, an expense. Spend only where return multiplies. Sun Tzu said, "Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win." Economy of motion is victory won in advance. Conserve, concentrate, strike. Waste nothing. Waste no word, no step, no strike. Your life is finite. Your motion is finite. Spend it as if it were gold, and the world will bend to the weight of your precision. Chapter 20, The Strength of Resilience, Bouncing Back with Precision. Sun Tzu's timeless wisdom reads, "In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." Resilience is not simply the ability to endure hardship, it is the ability to transform adversity into power. The Sigma understands that resilience is the hidden strength that allows one to survive, thrive, and eventually conquer the battlefield of life. But resilience is more than stoic endurance. It is the art of bending without breaking, of absorbing shock without losing balance. In life, setbacks are inevitable. Failure, betrayal, loss, and defeat are not anomalies, they are part of the human condition. The Sigma doesn't seek to avoid these challenges. He seeks to use them. Resilience is the shield that turns blows into lessons and defeats into the fuel of future victories. Sun Tzu wrote, "If your opponent is of choleric temper, seek to irritate him." The true essence of this is not cruelty but an understanding that resilience is built through pressure. In the natural world, muscles grow stronger by resisting tension. The Sigma knows that his true power is forged in the crucible of adversity, not in moments of ease. The anatomy of resilience, not just endurance, but transformation. Resilience is often misunderstood. Most people believe that resilience simply means toughing it out, enduring hardship without complaint. But true resilience is not a passive force, it is an active one. It is transformation in the face of challenge. A person who is truly resilient does not merely survive a storm, they learn how to harness its energy, adapt, and emerge stronger. The Sigma applies this principle both in his internal life and his external pursuits. When faced with setbacks, he does not lament. He assesses, recalibrates, and adapts. He understands that setbacks are not permanent, they are part of the cycle of growth. In this way, his resilience is not a mere defense against hardship, it is the foundation of his power. Consider the story of Thomas Edison, whose laboratory was burned to the ground in 1914. The loss was monumental, both in terms of work and wealth. Yet, rather than succumb to despair, Edison remarked, "Thank goodness all our mistakes were burned up. Now we can start fresh." Edison's response exemplifies resilience. His ability to turn catastrophe into opportunity was not a sign of mere endurance, but of transformation. He did not merely endure the loss, he embraced it as the catalyst for future success. The Sigma takes this lesson to heart. He welcomes failure not as an obstacle but as an opportunity to refine his approach, to become more agile, and to sharpen his strategy. The power of resilience is not in avoidance but in mastery over the challenges that shape us. The strategic value of resilience, turning setbacks into leverage. In military strategy, Sun Tzu frequently spoke of using terrain to your advantage, no matter how difficult or seemingly inhospitable. He said, "There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. However, short-term adversity can be used to gain an advantage, provided one knows how to turn it to leverage." The Sigma understands that setbacks can be used as stepping stones for greater power. Each defeat is a lesson, each loss, a foundation for future gain. He surveys the battlefield of his life, recognizing that resilience allows him to recover quickly and use failure as an advantage. For example, Apple faced numerous setbacks, from early near-bankruptcy to the loss of key executives. Yet each crisis was followed by a period of innovation, driven by their ability to recover quickly, learn from past mistakes, and turn challenges into new avenues for growth. The introduction of the iPod, iPhone, and iPad were born from these very challenges. Apple's resilience, the capacity to rebound, allowed them to revolutionize multiple industries. The Sigma follows the same strategy. His setbacks do not define him, they shape his next move. The real enemy is not the setback itself, but the failure to recognize the opportunity embedded within it. The Sigma does not wait for luck, he engineers his own opportunities by capitalizing on adversity. The Stoic foundation, inner resilience. While Sun Tzu focused on external resilience, the ability to bend without breaking in the face of an adversary, the Stoics offer invaluable wisdom on inner resilience. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The true test of resilience is internal. The world may throw all manner of obstacles in your path, but only you have the power to decide how you respond. The Sigma cultivates inner resilience through disciplined practice. He faces each day not as an opponent to overcome, but as a training ground for mastering his inner world. Consider the life of Nelson Mandela. After spending 27 years in prison, he emerged not broken, but stronger. He did not allow his circumstances to define him. Instead, he transformed his confinement into a source of inner power, developing a resilient mind that could face the world with clarity, compassion, and strategy. Mandela's resilience was not just physical survival, it was a mental transformation that allowed him to lead a nation out of its darkest hour. The Sigma takes this lesson deeply to heart. He understands that the mind governs everything. By strengthening his internal landscape, through meditation, reflection, and disciplined thought, he prepares for the inevitable challenges of life. Resilience is a muscle, and just as the body strengthens through repetition, so does the mind. The role of failure, a strategic asset. One of the greatest misconceptions about resilience is that it involves avoiding failure. In reality, resilience is born from failure. Sun Tzu's writings constantly emphasize the need to face adversity and adapt. He said, "In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity." The Sigma does not view failure as defeat but as a strategic asset. When faced with failure, the Sigma first looks at what he can learn. Rather than blaming circumstances or other people, he asks, "What can I control? What is the lesson here?" This is not just self-reflection, it is strategic analysis. It is the recognition that the best path forward is always illuminated by the mistakes of the past. In business, the classic example of this principle is Amazon. In its early years, Amazon lost money for a long time. Yet, each loss taught them valuable lessons in logistics, customer satisfaction, and pricing strategy. Jeff Bezos's resilience came not from simply enduring these setbacks, but from learning from each one and using them to refine Amazon's approach. Today, Amazon is an empire built on the foundation of those early lessons. For the Sigma, failure is never the end of the journey. It is always the beginning of a new phase, one that brings clarity, insight, and a renewed commitment to the mission. The tactical application of resilience. In battle, both ancient and modern, tactical resilience can be the difference between life and death, victory and defeat. Sun Tzu understood this well. He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot, will be victorious. The tactical application of resilience is to maintain clarity under pressure, to avoid the pitfalls of reactionary thinking, and to find opportunities in chaos. The Sigma uses this principle in his daily life. When faced with overwhelming pressure, he does not panic. He assesses the situation calmly, looking for cracks in the chaos where he can move with precision. In times of economic downturn, for example, the Sigma does not react with fear. He takes stock of his resources, hones his skills, and looks for underexploited opportunities. This is the difference between reactionary resilience and strategic resilience. The Sigma is not swept up by the storm, he uses it as leverage, knowing that chaos often signals shifts in the environment. Like the great traders of history, he knows that fortune favors those who maintain discipline in the face of adversity. You and this lesson? The lesson of resilience is to see adversity not as something to avoid but as an opportunity to grow. Begin by evaluating your current challenges. What can you learn from your setbacks? How can you use past failures to inform future moves? Next, build your inner resilience. Invest in your mental and emotional strength through daily practices, meditation, journaling, and reflection. Strengthen your ability to respond thoughtfully, not react impulsively. Finally, evaluate your goals. Is your current course sustainable, or is it built on fragile foundations? The Sigma takes time to prepare for setbacks by building resilience into every part of his strategy. When the inevitable adversity arrives, he will be ready. And like a master strategist, he will turn it into leverage for future success. Sun Tzu's wisdom remains: opportunities multiply as they are seized. The Sigma seizes his opportunities not by avoiding failure, but by bouncing back from it, with greater insight, greater power, and greater clarity. Key takeaway: resilience is the ability to use adversity to fuel progress. The Sigma builds his strength by transforming failure into opportunity. Every setback, every loss, is simply a step in the march toward greater power. End of Part 3.